Okay. What a day. I tell you, what a day. Hello, boys and girls, Bleacher Report users. If you're watching after the fact on YouTube, welcome back to another live stream exclusively on Bleacher Report. I'm back. My name is Rodney. Thank you so much for watching. And oh boy, a lot's happened in the last 18 hours with the Las Vegas Raiders. I thought at one point this was just going to be another recap of another loss from another bad football team. Last night I'm playing Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Yes, they roped me back in. And my phone's going absolutely crazy. And I see that Bleacher Report sends me an update on my phone and it says Antonio Pierce has yet to decide between Scott Turner or Edgar Bennett, or he doesn't know who's calling the plays yet. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, Luke Getsy got demoted. Interesting. And then you know how phones work. The iPhones like hide like a Bleacher Report notification under the next one. It's like a stack. I see another one a couple minutes before that one that says Luke Getsy has been relieved of his duties. And I go, okay, I know what I'm talking about tomorrow. So not only are we going to talk about Luke Getsy, I'm making sure that everything is going good here. Yep. Okay. Not only are we going to talk about Luke Getsy, right, the offense as a whole, but not only is it an election day tomorrow, but it is the NFL trade deadline. A lot of people are going to be on their phones tomorrow looking at updates of every single thing that's been going on. And we are going to talk about what the Raiders should do. They are obviously going to be sellers. I'm going to discuss which player I believe is the most valuable for the Raiders to get rid of that wouldn't behoove them to do so in the future, or that it would not behoove them in the future to do. Like, for example, everyone's like, are the Raiders going to trade Max Crosby? I don't want to get an email from Mark Davis like Adam Schefter did, but we will see what happens. So, the first thing I want to talk about before we get into all the trade chaos that will ensue is the Luke Getsy of it all. I think this is something that we knew was in place, that was going to happen for a long time. It's just the timing of it all. Last year, Halloween, Josh McDaniels is gone. And I don't want to celebrate firing people. I don't like doing that. But this is a business. They're making a lot of money to play football and to coach these teams, right? And at a certain point, if you're not getting the job done, you got to go. So my question to all of you watching here in the chat, all of you watching post Bleacher Report on YouTube, my YouTube channel is youtube.com/ALLaBorde Raiders. Just hit 10,000 subscribers, no big deal. My question to you is this, and I'm going to wait for the chat to fill up here before my first poll goes out. My question is, was the timing of this correct, right? Because I don't, and here's the thing. Look, as I put the first poll out, right? Does firing Getsy fix the offense? That's the first thing we need to discuss. Because although I do think it was the right decision, right, I don't know if this is going to save the season. In fact, I'm pretty confident to say that it's not going to, quote unquote, save the season. I don't expect the offense to look that much better, right? However, it was the right move. So, these four options for the poll, I kind of went through all different stages. At first, I was like, absolutely, this offense is going to be rocking and rolling. Then I was like, well, they could be a little bit better. I don't know if they have the roster in place. And then the more I thought about it, the more I thought the roster's not yet ready to take the next step. So I'm not positive that the Luke Getsy decision is going to have any sort of impact, positive or negative, this season, right? That's just my personal opinion. As of right now, the poll is we don't have the players in place to improve. And I completely agree with that. We have some nice pieces. We have a Brock Bowers, right? We have a Jacoby Myers, although we might not once we talk about the trade deadline stuff. Not that I know anything about what's going on. I'm just asking to ask, right? But yeah, I think that the Luke Getsy thing, it was the right thing to do ultimately, and I do think in the future, if Antonio Pierce retains this job, they need to do a really good job of making sure they get the next offensive coordinator right. If they don't go with a Ben Johnson, they need to find somebody that will be able to develop the next quarterback that we draft. Because I think if I was a betting man, and I am, and most people watching are, I think you have to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. And I don't know right now if I trust Antonio Pierce on his own to be able to develop this new young quarterback. They're gonna need to find the next great offensive mind, right? So only time will tell. Only time will tell. What say you guys? Do you have any idea as to who you want as next offensive coordinator? Because as of right now, there are only two options on this current staff, which I will get into in a second. But you know, Getsy's gone, which is something that we've all wanted. So, as we move on to the next question I have here, because they did not yet announce who was going to be taking over for the play calling, right? They didn't announce it yet. However, I do think there are two options that they're going to go with. My preference is to go with Edgar Bennett, and as I put this next poll up here, let's see. Actually, I'll leave this one up until more people go. But for right now, I think they're going to go Scott Turner. Scott Turner was the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, and now he is our pass game coordinator, I believe so. Actually, I will just do it right now. So I unpin and close this one. Here's the next one. Who will call the offense now that Luke Getsy is no longer with us? He's still alive. He's just not coaching the team anymore. The consensus right now from insiders is that they are saying it makes the most sense for Scott Turner to take over the pass game and the run game, I guess, because he's the pass game coordinator. He will just have to get involved in the run game more. Obviously, that's one of the biggest problems with our team so far. Here's my thing with Scott Turner. He was the offensive coordinator 2020 till this new regime took over for the Commanders, right? Edgar Bennett was the offensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers from 2017 to 2019 before John Gruden hired him as our wide receiver coach and Josh McDaniels retained him, which is why he's still on the roster. He survived a bunch of different regimes, a bunch of different coaching changes. If you're looking at it in a vacuum, the offense that Edgar Bennett, ran with the Packers was better than the offense that Scott Turner ran with the Commanders. But if you look at the bigger picture, Edgar Bennett had Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Scott Turner had who? Taylor Heinicke, Sam Howell? And that's ultimately my point with firing Luke Getsy and having one of these guys replace him. My choice would be Bennett, although I don't hate Scott Turner. At least one of them has experience calling plays. It's not going to be a Bo Hardigree situation where he's never called plays before, and he did okay for what it was. He wasn't great, but he did okay. I just don't think that, especially at the quarterback position, it's going to matter for this season. Maybe one of these two guys shows that they are able to at least put their hat in the ring to become the permanent offensive coordinator for next season. But beyond that, I don't think there's going to be much of a difference between Getsy. I take that back. There is going to be a significant difference in terms of scheme and in terms of getting our star players the ball, because I think an interim coach, their idea is to simplify everything, right? Make sure we get Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers the football. And I think we will have success doing that. The problem, again, is going to be like when Luke Getsy, we scripted the plays and it was perfect. He had to go off script and it kind of fell apart, right? Will Scott Turner or Edgar Bennett, whoever it ends up being, be able to go off script well enough, make adjustments mid-game, in-game, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, to prove that they deserve a shot to be the permanent OC. Same thing that happened with Antonio Pierce, right? Raiders says Scott had Sam Howell throwing it all over the field. He'd help see what Ritter can do. We have nothing to lose. Let's see what we can do. And that's ultimately the point, right? We've got nothing to lose. And you bring up Desmond Ritter as I want to transition here into the trade deadline of it all. Because, okay, we're going to be sellers, no doubt about it. However, there is a very bad situation that we have in terms of the quarterback position, right? And right now it's Gardner Minshew or Desmond Ritter or praying that Aiden O'Connell is healthy. And that's not going to get it done. So my first question in terms of the trade deadline is this. Should the Raiders trade for a quarterback? This will determine if they sell, right? If they decide, no, there's still a chance that we could pull this off, then I guess they would need to trade for a quarterback, right? But if they don't, then they're not going to, right? So I want to see what people are saying in the comments before we get into us selling and before we get into a potential another ad, because I do think I think the Raiders are in an interesting spot, right? And I see people in the chat now. Okay, we're rocking and rolling. And my third option there is Ryan Tannehill. Here's the ultimate question with trading for a quarterback. If you're Antonio Pierce, you want to win every football game. You want to plan for the future. You want to draft Shedeur Sanders, whatever. Sure, cool. It all comes down to how confident he is that he will get another year with the Raiders if they continue to lose games. If they go 2-15, does Antonio Pierce get another year? Or do they need to trade for a quarterback to be competitive enough to show Mark Davis, okay, Antonio Pierce, we just need the quarterback. He's the right guy for the job. And I think if you have that mindset, there's a chance that they might want to trade for somebody. And if they go to trade for one of these quarterbacks, who is it going to be? The first name that pops into my mind is Justin Fields. Anthony Richardson's name has been thrown around. Bryce Young's name has been thrown around. Dak is hurt, though. I see Dak is available with the eyeball emojis. I think he's hurt, though. That's ultimately what it comes down to. In my personal opinion, I don't think they should trade for a quarterback. I think you just ride it out with Ritter until Aiden O'Connell is healthy. Minshew doesn't see the light of day unless there's an injury, because you cannot go back to starting him and benching him. At a certain point, I feel bad for Gardner Minshew. I think you roll with Ritter, you roll with Aiden, and you got to see if one of these two quarterbacks can be your backup quarterback for the foreseeable future. And if that's great, if they can, that's great. You got a good, cheap backup quarterback. If not, then you got to go get a bridge quarterback like a Ryan Tannehill for this young kid. So what are we seeing here? Why don't we just continue to tank, get a good pick? Who cares about a 6-7 win season? I don't disagree with that. Oh, the Dak thing was sarcasm. Tyrone says, trade for Fields or Young. If they pan out, build your draft around them. AP is gone. If we do trade for somebody, we need O-line and CB help. Okay. So here's the next question I have for you then. Because I understand as Raider fans, we want to say, let's upgrade. I don't think as of right now, we're in a position to be buyers, right? However, I posed the question to you because I just want to gauge where we're all at. Is there a specific position you'd like to see us upgrade at, or do you think we should just sell? Because I think there's a situation where you can trade for younger guys or guys that are on contract years and use that $100 million that you have in cap space to extend these guys, right? And also sell off some older, more experienced commodities. The main person I'm thinking right now is Jacoby Myers. He's not old by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a valuable player. I can think of a handful of teams right off the bat that would love to have Jacoby Myers on their team. And I see Lando says we need draft picks. I don't disagree with that. And I think the best way to do that is to say, hey, we're open for business. Anybody that's not Max Crosby or Brock Bowers, somebody that we just drafted, it's time. It's time. So there's people, the unfortunate thing is people that they might trade, like a Marcus Epps maybe, injured, right? We have so many injuries, so many linemen that just got hurt. Maybe they were thinking about getting rid of a Colton Miller and letting DJ Glaze take over the left side of the offensive line, but now he's hurt. And I think that really throws a wrench in what Tom Telesco wanted to do initially. There's not a lot of guys that come to mind that you can just outwardly sell and get a draft pick that's worth anything. I see Trey Diablo. I trade anyone but Max, JPJ, Bennett. Anyone else can go. I don't disagree with that. If there are any biters for Minshew, there won't be. But if there are, you try to get a seventh. I wouldn't care at all. I see Jay Martinez says Trayvon Merrick is going to be traded. That could be something that's possible too, especially with Isaiah Pola-Mao and how well he's playing. Tyree Wilson only has 1 sack this season. He's another guy that could be on the market. But I like the way this poll's going right now. I do think if there's any position that we need to upgrade, it's either running back or line. Wide receiver we can look at in free agency. But I do think the main goal here is to sell, right? So as I discussed the Jacoby Myers of it all, here's my thought process with Jacoby Myers. Trade Hobbs? I wouldn't trade Hobbs. I think Hobbs is too valuable. Okay. So as I close this poll here and we move on to the Jacoby Myers of it all, I cooked up a few options here. And before you guys come at me and say, Jacoby Myers is worth way more than a 4th round pick, Devontae Adams, I know he's a little bit older, just went for a 3rd. That could become a 2nd. It ain't going to become a 2nd. He went for a 3rd round pick. So if we were to deal Jacoby Myers, who I think right now is the hottest commodity that the Raiders can use to get something back, what is the ideal situation? What is the ideal package that you would take for somebody like a Jacoby Myers? And by the way, I love Jacoby. He was great yesterday. He's one of the few guys that shows up week in and week out. But these are the 3 options that came to mind. I think the 49ers could sneaky be a 4th option. And don't be afraid to cook up your own trade options in the comments, whether you're watching here live or watching on my YouTube channel after. I think if we go down the line here, the Steelers are absolutely looking to upgrade at the wide receiver position. They have somebody like a Najee Harris, and they could have plug-and-play running backs behind Jaylen Warren. Maybe a 5th-round pick and Jaylen Warren. That could be interesting. We can upgrade at running back with a young muscle hamster Doug Martin type guy. The Texans, Stephon Diggs, they just lost for the season, torn ACL. Nico Collins is coming back, right? But they've shown to be aggressive with trading for wide receivers to help their young quarterback. And I think that they would be in the market for somebody like a Jacoby Myers, especially with Nico Collins coming back. I don't think they're going to offer anything more than 1 pick because they know they have Collins and Dell, and they have the great tight end. But the Texans, I could see as someone that would potentially want Jacoby Myers. And lastly, I have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have shown a willingness to have talks with us. I know it was a different regime, but I think the Packers are somebody, they have a lot of good young talent, but this last game against the Lions showed that firepower-wise, they have no chance. And they went toe-to-toe with the Minnesota Vikings, and the Vikings won another game. The Vikings got an easy schedule coming up. It's very foreseeable that the Vikings are 8-3, worst-case scenario, after 3 weeks. And the Packers, I think they're going to make the playoffs, but that's a tough division. Even the Bears are no pushover. So if the Packers go 4-6 for Jacoby, I don't hate that either. And then the last team I said, although I have an option here to keep Jacoby, which I think ultimately we will do, although you never know. Tom Telesco, Coupon Tom, they call him wheeling and dealing. It could free up some more cap space. However, I do think keeping Jacoby for the future is an interesting take because he's only, what is he? I think he's 28 years old. That's not old at all by a wide receiver stretch. The problem is he's not going to be your number one. If you keep Jakobi Meyers for the future, you're going to have to find somebody in free agency, like a T. Higgins, to supplement with him. Then you have a T. Higgins if you sign him in free agency, a Jakobi Meyers, a Trey Tucker to take off the top of the defense, and a Brock Bowers, which is your focal point. So, what are we saying here? You need someone to throw the ball to besides Bowers for a young quarterback next year. I don't disagree. Jacoby for Fields, that could be interesting. I could see Andre James getting traded. The only problem with that is, again, I think he's a little banged up, and he hasn't played particularly well. Not going to listen to your opinion of a fire sale, bad call. I'm not saying that we should trade all these guys in succession. I'm saying there's a list of players that could be traded. I'm not saying that they should trade all these guys. But when I say that we should sell, I'm simply saying that there are guys that we have that we could sell off. One or two guys maximum, not the whole list of people that I said. Bring back Daryl LaMonica. Hey, if you had a time machine, that would help. We have Michael Mayer. Yeah, I forgot about Michael Mayer. No doubt about it. Give Saints Gardner for Carr. Derek Carr. Yikes. Another coach got fired under his tenure. We're able to get a third from Pittsburgh. I don't think we're going to be able to get a third just because we set the market with Devontae. I think Devontae, right now, peak of his powers, is still a better player than Jakobi Meyers. But Tom Telesco has shown time and time again he's willing to take the right deal. And I think he did the best he could with the Devontae situation, especially with the way that was handled with Devontae, a little NBA-esque, kind of forcing his way to a specific team, right? I don't hate this trade Jacoby to the Niners for Trey Mason, or or George Mason, Trey Mason. I just don't think that Kyle Shanahan would do that. I think he values having like 6 running backs on his team, especially with the amount of time Christian McCaffrey spends on IR. I wouldn't hate that. Trade Hobbs and a 4th to Indy for Anthony Richardson. The problem I have with Anthony Richardson, and it might feel like a small thing right now, but the fact that he took himself out of the game is wild. He's either not built physically to be in the National Football League stamina-wise, or he's not built mentally, which is a problem. But if you guys got any other ideas about what we can do, and look, we could talk about Max right now. The idea about trading Max Crosby, I'll keep the poll going, but I'll unpin it for now. Again, I don't want to get an email from Mark Davis. I don't want to get my bosses at Bleacher Report reamed out. However, if the Detroit Lions came to you and said, we'll give you 3 first-round picks for Max Crosby, not going to happen. If they did, do you say no? I want the chat filling up if the Lions say 3 firsts for Max. Because what did we get for Khalil Mack? 2 firsts? I think at least 2, right? We got 2 and maybe a 4th. We gave up a 3rd. That ended up being Cole Kmet. I see Panthers want to trade us Chuba Hubbard, question mark. We'll get to that in a second. Would you take 3 first-round picks for Max Crosby? Keeping in mind that those picks are not going to be good first-round picks. We're talking Detroit Lions specifically. I see a no instantly, no exclamation point, no, all caps. Here's the thing. I don't disagree. Oh, I said, okay, I see no. I see I trade Max for 3 firsts in a heartbeat. No trade unless it's 3 firsts and 2 thirds. Okay, look. I would not trade Max Crosby for anything. He's the heart and soul of the team. And I think, he's got the Raider Nation tattooed on his body. The Detroit Lions are going to be really good for a long time. And that pick for the next 3 years is going to be 27 minimum. And when we traded Khalil Mack to the Bears, we were not able to capitalize with those picks. And I trust Tom Telesco more than I trust Mike Mack and John Gruden. But just because you get first-round picks doesn't mean anything. I do think if we were like 5-5 right now, but like or 4-6, right? Still kind of in the mix. And we thought in order to be able to get up for Shedeur Sanders, we would need more firsts. It would be more enticing to trade Max to get those firsts in order to package something to maybe the Patriots to go up. But I don't think we need to do that because we're just that bad right now. We're not going to need more ammunition to trade up to get the guy we want because I think we're just going to be in position to get the guy we want. And Max Crosby is not asking out, just to be clear. Romero said fire Getsy. Getsy's been fired. So that's where I've landed on the Max Crosby of it all. I do think there's a world in which I would accept a Jacoby Myers trade. Under no circumstances am I trading Max Crosby. Mark Davis has made that clear. Antonio Pierce has made that clear. Max has made that clear. Yeah, and unless he asks to be moved, which he's made unequivocally clear from get-go, from day one, I would not get rid of him for anything. As I said earlier, all our trade capital is currently injured. Raiders will make any moves because of injuries. I don't disagree. I think it was unfortunate how many guys have been injured this season in terms of the trade deadline and how many guys got injured yesterday in particular. I think a couple of those linemen were ripe to be traded, and now you need them all. You need all of them. It's an absolute problem. So, obviously, the Raiders are going to be sellers. However, there was one position I do think we could upgrade on. And just because we are looking to maybe upgrade at this specific position does not mean that we can't sell in the meantime. So let's cook up some last minute trades here for a running back because the running back situation for the Raiders has been terrible. Absolutely awful. And I've got two options here, the most likely options I think that could be on the block. Tank Bigsby, who is ETN's backup, who's looked pretty good in his absence. Chuba Hubbard, who's fifth in the league in rushing, who is probably going to lose his job soon to the rookie out of Texas, Jonathan Brooks. If you have another idea, comment that below. Or do we stick with Alexander Madison and Zamir White? Here's the thing. We're in sell mode. But to upgrade at the running back position doesn't mean we're going to win more games. It just means that we have a better chance to be able to get the run game going next year once we draft this rookie quarterback. And maybe you package somebody like a Jacoby Myers in one of these deals or a Trayvon Merrick in one of these deals. I would not trade any draft capital 4th round and up for any one of these guys. I'm going Jacoby Myers and a 6th or a 7th. So we are still technically selling, but upgrading the running back position. I see Tom Telesco and Pierce should be let go for letting JJ walk out the door. Here's the problem with the Josh Jacobs of it all. I just don't think we'd still be very good. And now we've got a lot of money wrapped up in somebody who probably gets hurt this year because our offensive line has been terrible. And we discussed Luke Getsy before. I do think the offense is going to look marginally better, but I don't think it's going to save the season. Right? We don't have the players yet in place. So, Josh Jacobs, it would be nice. I just don't think that's a possibility right now in terms of him. Obviously, he'd be on the team, but I don't think he'd make us any better. Damian Pierce is another guy that I don't hate. I don't hate that at all. Draft a quarterback and running back with the first and second picks. I see them sticking with Madison and White, and ultimately, I do see them sticking with them as well. Alexander Madison hasn't looked terrible. Maybe you keep him for next year and supplement him with, a Najee Harris, right? Somebody who's going to be a free agent next year. I don't think Najee is going to get franchise tagged, although I could be wrong with that. And you kind of let that be the two-headed monsters. Zamir White has been an absolute disaster this season, although, again, it's not all his fault. The offensive line has been terrible. Absolutely terrible. But that's where I stand on all this. Luke Getsy getting fired, whether it's Edgar Bennett or Scott Turner taking over, it's not going to save the season, although the offense should look a little bit better. I would not trade Max Crosby for anything, for a pot of gold, for 3 wishes, for 10 first-round picks. Absolutely no circumstances. I would not trade him. Jacoby Myers is somebody that I absolutely could see them moving. I'd prefer if they didn't, but if they did, I would love to get a running back in return or at least a 4th-round pick. But at the end of the day, only time will tell. We got about 24 hours until this thing is over. So, and by the way, the Raiders lost. I wasn't supposed to recap the game, but we lost. There was a moment there at the end with the Jack Jones pick where it was like, oh, we're going to win this game? Nope, we lost. We stayed the course and we're still tanking. We're not purposely tanking, but we are losing. I don't want to tank. I'm anti-tank, but it's the nature of the beast. That's the business. If you want to get a quarterback, you're going to have a high pick, most likely to get him. So I think that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you so much for watching, whether you're watching live on Bleacher Report or watching the post upload on YouTube. Check me out, youtube.com/ALLaBorde Raiders. It's down here. Here it is, right there. I will see you next week. Let me get the time right. I believe it's 2 p.m. No, not next week, because next week we have a bye. So the next time I will be on here is November 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.